Today, I'm going to explain the movie 5 Feet Apart, released in the year 2019. The movie revolves around a girl named Stella Grant. She is a cystic fibrosis patient, and she has to live in the hospital waiting for a potential donor to become available. To cope with her illness, she actively uses social media and tries to live a normal life. She also likes building apps and reorganizing things in her free time. At the hospital, she has befriended a nurse named Barbara and a fellow CF patient, Poe, who is openly gay. She likes to write the things she has to accomplish in a day in her diary. Seeing most people around her in loving relationships, Stella also longs for a relationship. One day, while walking around the hospital, Stella encounters another CF patient, Will Newman, secretly renting his hospital room to his friends to have sex. Seeing Stella roll her eyes at him, Will follows her into the maternity ward, where she likes to spend her time watching over the newborn babies, and confronts her. As the two bicker, Barbara arrives and chastises them for standing so close to each other. CF patients are strictly kept at least 6 feet apart to reduce the risk of cross-infection, as contracting bacterial infections from other CF patients can be life-threatening. Moreover, it is revealed that Will has B. capacia infection, due to which he can't undergo lung transplant, unlike Stella, who is currently looking for a lung donor. Currently, Will is part of the new drug trial for sevoflurane. Will leaves, but not before telling Stella to lighten up because it's just life. After returning to his room, Will watches every single video Stella has posted on her channel. The next day, Poe chokes on his food while video chatting with Stella. Fortunately, he manages to alert the nurses with the call button, and Stella also rushes to his room. Poe manages to survive and assures everyone that he is fine. Stella also learns that Poe has broken up with his boyfriend, Michael. Later that night, after being briefed by his doctor about his drug trials, Will goes over to the hospital's roof to spend some time by himself. Fed up with being sick, he removes his nasal cannula and sits on the edge of the roof. Stella notices him from her window and rushes to the roof. She asks him to get away from the edge, but a nonchalant Will jokes about it. Upset, she tells him that if he doesn't care about living, he should give his spot at the trial to someone else. Will agrees and stands up on the edge, seemingly to jump off the building. Stella panics and pleads with Will to stop. Will laughs and tells her that he is just messing with her. Upset, Stella tells him to go to hell and leaves. Over the course of the next few days, Stella tries to ignore him, but her OCD makes her keep thinking about Will not following his regimen. She ultimately decides to check up on him. As expected, he isn't taking his meds, and Stella chastises him for it. However, when Will tells her to keep him out of her save the world hero complex, Stella walks away. Will follows her to the maternity ward, where Stella likes to go to keep herself calm. Will asks her what her problem is, and she explains that seeing him not follow his regimen is driving her crazy because of her OCD. He agrees to help her, but on the condition that she lets him draw her, and Stella reluctantly agrees. With the help of Poe, Stella sneaks into Will's room to organize it and his medical cart. She also builds an app for him which will remind him to do his treatment and take his pills. However, Will still keeps skipping his meds, so Stella makes him do his treatment together with her, and the two spend more and more time together, albeit virtually. After keeping his end of the deal, Will finally gets to draw Stella. As he sketches her, Stella tells him about his master to-do list, off of which she has already crossed things, while Will tells him about his dream of traveling the world. This reminds Stella about her adventurous sister named Abby, who died a few years ago while she was cliff diving. Stella's optimism begins to rub off on Will, and his nurse Julie notes that he has become more hopeful. One day, he notices the drawings in Stella's room and asks her about them. She reveals that they were made by her sister Abby, and when Will asks her about Abby, Stella abruptly shuts him down. Intrigued, Will looks up Abby on social media platforms and learns that she has passed away. He later confronts Stella for keeping this from him, and she reveals that she didn't mention it because she doesn't like talking about death. She reveals that her illness and Abby's death has strained their parents' marriage, and they are in the process of getting separated. After the uncomfortable conversation, Stella begins avoiding Will, and she also learns that she has developed an infection due to her G-tube, which could give rise to sepsis. Will apologizes to her through a cartoon, and she forgives him. She tells him about the infection and the G-tube replacement surgery she is set to undergo tomorrow. To cheer her up, Will sneaks into the operation theater before her surgery. Barbara catches him sneaking out of the room and tells him about her former romantically involved CF patients who died from cross-infection. She feels guilty for letting them break the rules, which resulted in their death. So Barbara does not want to see this happen again. Stella's high-risk surgery turns out to be a success, and when she opens her eyes, she leaves Will voicemails high on painkillers, admitting her feelings for him. However, Barbara's warnings give Will a much-needed wake-up call, and he begins to keep his distance from Stella. Poe tries to console him, but ends up getting into an argument with her. Upset, Stella calls Poe out for lecturing him while he is deliberately pushing his boyfriend away because of his illness. Stella and Poe also stop talking to each other for some days, but the two best friends eventually make up. Stella also comes up with a plan to hang out with Will again. She makes a moving video in which she declares that after all that CF has stolen from her, she wants to steal 1 foot from the 6-foot distance she must maintain from other patients. Will and Stella then go on their first date using a 5-foot billiard stick. They sit by the pool and get to talking. Stella finally tells him about Abby and how she died, due to which she almost breaks into tears. But Will keeps her from crying and makes her smile. The two then strip to reveal their scars from their past surgeries and jump in the pool. Meanwhile, Barbara clocks in at work and notices Will and Stella missing from their rooms. She asks Poe about their whereabouts, but he feigns ignorance. After Barbara leaves to find the pair, Poe alerts them and they quickly make it back to their rooms in time. The next day, it is Will's birthday, and he asks Stella if they can meet, but she tells him that she is studying. Upset, he goes back to sleep, and not long after, he receives a text from Stella. She gives him a scavenger hunt that leads him to the hospital cafeteria, where Stella and Will's friends surprise him with a clandestine party. Poe has also started talking to his ex-boyfriend, Michael. He happily announces that he is taking Michael to introduce him to his parents. The group laugh and enjoy the food prepared by Poe, who is a semi-professional chef. As they take pictures, Barbara walks into the room. Upset, Barbara threatens to transfer Will to another hospital. Stella takes her words lightly, but Barbara prepares to submit the transfer note. However, before she is able to send the application, she gets an alert from Poe's room. The nurses rush in to find him out cold on his hospital room's floor. A few more nurses enter the room. One gives CPR in hope that Poe will survive. The commotion attracts the attention of Will and Stella, and they plead with Poe to wake up from a distance. The doctors and nurses try their best, but Poe doesn't wake up. Stella runs back to her room and breaks into tears, lamenting losing everyone in her life. Will tries to comfort her, but she pushes his hands away and kicks him out of her room in order to protect him. Later in the evening, she goes outside the hospital. She notices Will sitting in the lobby and calls him outside. She invites him to go see the lights in the distance. When Will advises her against it, as it's 2 miles away from the hospital, Stella tells him that she is fed up of living life too strictly. She has been keeping herself from living her life for the sake of her treatment. Growing up, everyone was prepared for her to die, but she has been the only one to live. She says that she wants to start living her life before it's over. Stella grabs Will's hand, which she justifies by using the gloves she has on, and the two take a long walk in the snow. On their way there, Will and Stella come across a pond, and they slide around on the frozen surface. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Barbara is notified about a lung donor that's available for Stella after waiting for years. Barbara rushes to inform Stella, but she learns that she has gotten out of her room yet again. Barbara tries to reach her through text asking where she is, but Stella decides to ignore them to be with Will. After playing around for a while, they sit down and Stella leans in for a kiss, but Will backs out to protect her. Suddenly, the frozen lake begins to give way, so the two sit on the bridge. Meanwhile, Will and Stella's parents arrive at the hospital and panic over their disappearance. Will's mom texts him and informs him that Stella has found a donor. When Will tries to take her back to the hospital, Stella falls off the bridge. She falls through the ice and Will rushes to help her. Will manages to pull her out of the water, but the shock of the cold water makes Stella unresponsive and puts her into cardiac arrest. Will cries out for help, but there's no one around. Will performs CPR, ignoring the risk of infection. Stella wakes up and the two make their way back to the hospital. Stella refuses to take the lungs, but Will convinces her to go through with the transplant. Will informs the doctor about the CPR, and fortunately, Stella hasn't caught the infection from Will. When Stella wakes up from her surgery, she sees Will through the glass of her room. He tells her that he only has a month to live, and he doesn't want her to have to go through his death like all the other deaths she went through. He tells her goodbye and doesn't know what is to come in terms of him and her. Before he goes, he makes her close her eyes because he said he wouldn't be able to leave if she was looking at him. She closes her eyes and he walks away. That was all from the video. I hope you liked it. Subscribe for more content like this and hit the like button to help us out. Also, leave a comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Until next time, take care.